In this video, I'm going to describe some criticisms I have of the show Majority Report with Sam Seder. I usually enjoy listening to contrary opinions, and so I was happy to discover this show recently. But after watching 20 to 30 clips on YouTube, I've found a few recurring themes that spoil my enjoyment of the show and frustrate me. I'll review those here. Attempts at humor compose a significant percentage of this show. Sometimes Sam Seder and his friends are genuinely funny, sometimes not, but where this gets to be a problem is when they start to substitute humor for having an argument, and this is something that they are frequently guilty of. Rather than actually respond to points or address issues specifically, they'll simply make fun of whoever it is they're ostensibly responding to.
As people unfettered by being part of the US government. And as you can see,
all right, pause it for just like a weird reaction from the crowd. Like, wait, is he really saying this? And then there's like three people are like, yay!
I served in the administration so that I could have immunity for life, which is something you think is usually restricted to Jews and your money lendings.
Now I can rev my car and switch from neutral right into drive. Skid out. 24 marathon. Can do now. This guy cannot deliver a speech.
Don't forget to mention my name up there, you fucking faggot James Bond terrorist guy.
Mocking voices is something that Sam Seder and his friends frequently do in lieu of making an actual response on a topic. In the clip I just showed, they were mocking Sebastian Gorka, who was an assistant at the White House, for a speech that Gorka gave at the Values Voters Summit. But their mockery had no actual substance. They're making fun of the way he speaks, or talking about people he knows, or prior accusations of criminal wrongdoing against him, etc. You might argue that there is actually no substance in Gorka's speech to respond to, but if that's the case, then why did they choose that clip to address? Why? What's the point of showing something insubstantial and then insubstantially responding to it? Here is another example of the same phenomenon, and if you watch their YouTube show, you can see many such examples.
Why are we handing out green cards on the basis of a lottery? So who's lobbying against it? I mean, just let's put a fine point on this. Where is the lobby that wants to preserve something that makes no sense?
There's two forces protecting it. One is narrow, one is broader. The narrow one, interestingly, is the Black Caucus, because they have now come to adopt this as their pet immigration program.
Pause it for 1 second. All right, just now, of course, we all know how much power the Black Caucus has in this country. After they were done with the reparations, and after they were done with providing all of this job training for the African-American community in this country.
How many profiles get written on the Elijah Cummings budget? It
is unbelievable.
It's relentless.
The way that they got the Supreme Court to gut the Voting Rights Act, that was brilliant. We all know that if there's a policy in place, of course,
all to set the stage.
the Black Caucus has to be behind
the Black Caucus
it.
veto.
Of course.
Black Caucus is ruthless.
They're ruthless. And they even do this even when their own party is out of power.
They still run everything around here.
It's unbelievable.
If you go to D.C., they'll always tell you it's the black guy who's in charge.
The subject under discussion from this clip is the Visa lottery program. Tucker Carlson's guest has just claimed that the Congressional Black Caucus supports this program. Sam Seder and the Majority Report crew are mocking Carlson and his guest for saying that. But what they neglect to do is actually consider the claim that was just made. Their attempts at humor are cynical and in some sense amusing, but also devoid of meaning. They neglect to address the clip they just watched. And instead of offering meaningful commentary on it, they just have jokes. While the Congressional Black Caucus is certainly not secretly running Washington, although nobody claimed that they were, the Congressional Black Caucus is a coalition of 49 United States congressmen, so they aren't exactly powerless either. And on their website, the Congressional Black Caucus explicitly states their support for the Visa lottery program. Quote, "Sadly, the president has injected his racist policies into these negotiations, mainly his unreasonable demands to completely end the diversity visa program. This program greatly benefits immigrants from African countries and provides an opportunity for them to achieve the American dream. End quote. So Sam Seder and his friends are laughing and mocking the idea that the Congressional Black Caucus has anything to do with extending the visa lottery program, but actually they do support the visa lottery program. So they've just ignored the subject under discussion and made fun of it instead, adding nothing to the conversation and diverting attention away from the actual substance.
Has any policy, any single policy in modern America hurt Africans more than our immigration?
No, it's a good question. And in fact, even African immigration is actually a problem for Black Americans.
Look at the numbers, exactly.
Pause it. I wonder if we could come up with any single policy that has hurt African Americans more in this country than the lottery-based immigration policy. That whole thing with the vote, denying them the vote, slavery,
Jim Crow.
Jim Crow. Oh, Jim Crow, that's good.
Segregated.
I mean, yeah, wait, we went over the whole thing about them being property, right?
To mention the Fugitive Slave Act. Maybe the whole time where they weren't technically human.
And the lottery system.
They go on for about 5 minutes proposing ideas for other policies that were more harmful to blacks in America than the diversity visa lottery system, apparently forgetting that Tucker Carlson said,
any policy, any single policy in modern America hurt Africans more than our immigration. In modern America,
as in modern American policy and not just any American policy. But anyway, they go on for about 5 minutes proposing other possible harmful policies that have hurt black people. But what they forget to do is actually discuss the subject in a substantive way. Perhaps Tucker Carlson is wrong and it's not the single most harmful modern American policy towards black people, but it's still an important question. Is it a harmful policy for black people at all? That's still worth consideration. And if you were being intellectually honest, you wouldn't just zero in on a single phrase and make fun of that phrase and then ignore the whole argument, but rather you would try to consider the argument at its foundational core. Is this a harmful thing to black people? Sam Seder and the Majority Report aren't being intellectually honest, though. Instead of making a real argument, they just make jokes, and that's typical. There's also a recurring theme where Sam and his friends pretend not to know who they are about to talk about.
Mike Zerdonich, Ben Shapiro?
James
Dumber.
James Dummer.
What's the name of that Crudup?
Steven Crowder?
Steven Crowder. I think he doesn't like it when you say McGinnis. I think he likes McInnes. So this is him calling Gavin McGinnis.
I'd estimate that they pretend not to know or to mispronounce the names of about 1/3 of the lesser-known conservative figures they discuss on the Majority Report. At first, I was confused why they would do this. Are they trying to make some kind of joke? Is this an insult, an inside joke that I don't know about? My current hypothesis is that they are trying a rhetorical trick like we saw in the previous section. Instead of making arguments, they make jokes and do funny voices and hope that the audience won't notice their substance-free response to various points that they address. With Mispronouncing Names, they are trying to do a similar thing. They are trying to imply to the viewer that the person they are discussing is a nobody, somebody not worth taking seriously, somebody who you shouldn't have heard of. They let this implication do their rhetorical work in place of actually dealing with arguments. Who's this Steven Crowder guy? He's somebody you don't have to take seriously. Sometimes they do this more directly and simply state that the person they're talking about is a failure.
So, you know who Steve Crowder is, man?
Oh, God, I know who Steve Crowder is.
All right, so give me your... we can build up to this shit.
I think that the best two-word description is failed comedian. That's what you need. That's sort of the locus for any understanding of Steve Crowder.
Is my board up? I need to give him this.
Say
that again, Matt, one more time.
He's a failed comedian.
So Steven Crowder is a failed comedian, but he's got far more subscribers, far more views with fewer videos. So how is he a failure exactly? Or to put it another way, if Steven Crowder is a failure, what does that make the crack team at the Majority Report? Granted, perhaps the Majority Report has other distribution channels that compose the bulk of their views, but it still doesn't make Steven Crowder a failure. Calling him a failure only serves a single point, which is to let them reject his arguments without addressing the merits of those arguments. To continue the general theme of this video, the Majority Report will often refuse to engage on the substance of issues and instead simply distort arguments and insult people. Here they are responding to the James Damore memo.
Y'all remember James Damore? Is that how you pronounce his name? Damore?
I'm saying Damore.
Damore, he was the guy who was oppressed by Google after he wrote a memo basically saying that, that women aren't really qualified for a lot of this, and just expressing his perspective about the legitimacy of the women who were hired by Google for being there. And the idea that you as an engineer are qualified to say that we can improve the culture here by eliminating essentially women.
You should read the Damore memo for yourself, if only to understand how shockingly dishonest people like the Majority Report and mainstream news media are when they cover the Damore memo. It is an egregious misrepresentation, bordering on a flat-out lie to suggest that Damore's memo intends to reduce the number of women in tech. In fact, he has a whole section on increasing the number of women who work at Google and the level that they work at. In other words, getting them promoted into higher positions at Google. Instead of taking a few minutes to read Damore's memo, understand what he's talking about, and having an actual substantive discussion of the topic at hand, Sam Seder and the Majority Report instead choose to blatantly misrepresent what Damore is saying, and then instead of responding to him, they just insult him and scorn and deride the misrepresentation that they have created. And this, again, is a typical tactic for the Majority Report. Here we can watch them apply the same level of intellectual rigor to a clip on Ben Shapiro.
Let's work on what's going on with the neck. That's all I'm saying here. I mean, I just sort of feel like
ad hominem.
It's worse than ad hominem what I'm doing here. It's petty, but I can't focus on what he's saying because there's the shaving issues.
That last joke about Ben Shapiro's shaving issues is kind of a strange one, so let me unpack it a little bit. Orthodox Jews are forbidden from using a razor to shave their facial hair. So Shapiro, who is an Orthodox Jew, has some excuse for why there is stubble on his neck. Modern Jews typically use electric razors. If I had to guess, I'd say that Sam Seder and Michael Brooks are both Jewish, so it's either weird that they don't know why Shapiro is not totally clean-shaven, or they're trying to make some kind of oblique Jewish joke. I'm not sure which it is. Either way, attacks on religious or ethnic lines are not out of character for the Sam Seder crew. Here they are making fun of Dinesh D'Souza for having an Indian-sounding voice.
Point. Nationalism is in fact characteristic of fascism, but nationalism is equally found on the left, as all the anti-colonial liberation movements were without exception nationalistic. They all they wanted to make Ghana great again, and they want to make India great again. So the fact that they were nationalistic by itself does not make them in any way fascist.
You know, many people are saying that India could become great in a certain sense if we spun our own cotton, and, the British are coming here and they have many problems.
And of course, they always mock Sebastian Gorka for having a Hungarian accent, because it's hilarious that he's from Hungary and speaks differently than they do. I would have liked to respond in detail to the Majority Report on many particular claims. The more of their videos that I watched, though, the more I found that they're operating in bad faith. They don't make real arguments, but instead favor caustic, cynical humor. They distort the truth and are either unwilling or unable to engage honestly about important topics that they purport to address. Instead of addressing them in detail, I've decided to use this video to sketch out some of the high-level things that annoy me about their show. Upcoming topics include a further examination of criminality and immigrants in Sweden. There are already a few videos on the subject of immigrants in Sweden on my channel, so I'd encourage you to go ahead and check those out if you're interested. I'll also be taking a look into why Western birth rates are declining in the relatively near future. If you enjoyed this video, then please let me know by clicking the like button. If you're interested in seeing more content in a similar style, then go ahead and click subscribe. Thanks for your time.